It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the full shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
Mary, Capernaum. Now, what kind of a title is that on the film? Is this worth talking about?
Well, it sounds biblical, but in fact, it means chaos in Arabic, and it is definitely a film worth talking about.
Okay, this is the Lebanese entry for the Oscars.
Yes.
And actually, we are just before the Oscars, so we won't know. And my feeling is that if more people saw this, it would give Roma and Shoplifters a real run.
I would have to agree with you.
All right. What do you know?
Well, first of all, it did win the Grand Jury Prize at the Cannes Film Festival, which is quite an achievement.
Yes.
And this film really moved me in a way that a film hasn't in a long time.
Yes.
To have a story that is so current and so close to the truth of our world and our society come forth in this beautifully told, beautifully crafted, fictional film really just blew me away as an active film.
Oh, I know. You know, and don't be distracted by the conceit of the film, which is that a young 12-year-old boy is suing his parents.
All parents out there, don't be afraid.
Right. for actually having him. Yes. He's in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, he stabbed someone and he took 5 years.
It's heartbreaking in so many ways, but the way that the film is crafted by Nadine Labaki, who is Lebanese, an actress, she appears in the film. She spent 5 years bringing this film forward, from her idea to interviewing that invisible layer of society in Lebanon, of the poor, the downtrodden, the over 1 million immigrants who have fled war-torn Syria. She actually had a team of people who helped her interview.
Well, how about the casting of this? Is almost all non-professionals.
Almost all non-professionals, also through a similar process. People who are cast in this film actually have lived in that world that she was trying to fairly represent and bring voice to. And the young man, Zane. In fact, the role started out under a different character name, but he so embodied what she was looking for in this almost 12-year-old, approximately 12-year-old boy. They eventually changed the name of the character to him.
I mean,
and he's amazing.
He I think he reminds some people of James Dean at a very young age, but he's absolutely beautiful looking kid. But he has such a presence in him. I mean, he has to truck around a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
in the streets of Beirut.
And a very solid 1-year-old baby.
Which is actually a girl.
Yes, I did hear that as
interesting?
well.
I know. Yeah. This kid, this 1-year-old, you've never seen. You're going to go to the movie just to see a 1-year-old.
And does an incredible job interacting with him, just by naturally being a 1-year-old baby, but adds so much to the film.
Yeah, there's a lot of dispossessed people here. I mean, Zane, of course, he just leaves his family when the family sells his sister.
Much beloved sister that he protected and was trying to protect from this fate of being sold into marriage at a far too young an age of 11.
And Mary, what about when we think about documentation immigrants of our current problems? This kid is undocumented, and therefore he's a non-person.
And that was part of what the director wanted to bring forward. Was part of what contributes to this invisible layer of society is you have people who don't have ID, don't have papers, don't have a birth certificate. And when I think about what it now takes for us to get our driver's license in the state of Ohio, where we are, you have to have your Social Security, you have to bring 2 other pieces of ID, and just to have an ID, so it really presents challenges that, although this is a Lebanese Arabic story, it actually is very relevant to our world, because we do have that invisible layer of society that we may not see in our daily
Oh,
lives, but
yes.
who struggle just to find the basics to sustain themselves and want to advance in their lives, but there are all these roadblocks that, in terms of bureaucracy and societal expectations, make it really hard.
I mean, the kid is as well as the mother of the young 1-year-old he's taking care of. They're all looking to get out
Yes.
and get that phony documentation. I mean, that for them it's forgery that's going to get them out of there. I think it gives you such a feeling of being imprisoned. I mean, she's caught that Levaki,
Right.
the director, and
You're trapped by your circumstances,
Oh,
by no choice of your own, which is what leads the character Zane to want to sue his parents for bringing
Right.
him into this world and not taking responsibility for him.
and his mother's sitting there. She's pregnant again.
Yes.
I mean, the kid is way beyond his years. He wants to say, and you're having another child? You couldn't even take care of me?
Yep. And it's just such a powerful message that the director intended in her interview she's given with all the awards and accolades
Yes.
the film has received, that she wanted this film, and she believes filmmaking in general should elevate our thinking and our feelings as humans. And I think she definitely achieved that with this film.
Well, yeah, and I remember you're crabbing about having to get here in the ice and so on. And I'm saying to you,
I did not
Mary.
crab. I do not crab. But go on with your comment.
Right, my comment is that we think that's bad. Take a look at the streets of Beirut. My goodness Lord. And what a job she does. She keeps that camera at his eye level. So you
Yeah.
are there without
We're
overwhelming.
alongside him.
Oh, yeah. It's not even an obtrusive point of view. It's just we're there.
And one of the things that struck me too is through most of the film you are right beside him with that camera angle, but there are parts where she, especially the opening, where it's the drone shot, the overhead shot
yes,
of
and I
the
love
slums
those.
of Beirut.
Yes.
And it harkened back for me to thinking about the first time I saw that shot was West Side Story. And you're talking about, in that story, immigrants from
Yes.
Puerto Rico, and just what is beneath that shot of the city. From that view, things may be okay, but when you get down at the level of the people living it, it may not be okay.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And in this case, it's the slums, so they're literally, you see tires everywhere
Yeah.
holding down the tarps over these oftentimes
Yeah.
self-built homes. And then she really takes you down into the stories represented through these very wonderful non-actor actors in this film.
This is this neo-realism type of stuff. I mean, DeSando would love this, but it reminds me that that what happens in all of this poverty, and this is another example of poverty porn.
I don't know if I'd use that term.
Well,
but-
that's kind of a term they're floating around for this kind of film. Because Zane is such a transcendent kid, it makes it almost beautiful.
I would agree with that. He's a character, and his eyes are so expressive.
Wow.
That through all of this hardship, he's born into a family that has far too many children they can support. The father doesn't work. All of the kids are sent out to hawk vegetables that their parents have cut up and put in cups and do all other
Well, Mary,
sorts
aren't
of
they
odd
making
jobs
some kind of drug that they're putting into the clothing?
to take into the prison
Right, to
to,
take into the-
to a relative who's in prison.
Yeah.
But they're hawking all this stuff, not going to school, and you realize that he very easily could have slipped as a human being into an uncaring, cold individual. But
Right.
he still has dreams of going to school, and
Yes.
when through his own actions of running away, he meets the Ethiopian woman who has the baby
Yes.
and starts caring for the baby so that
She-
she can go to work.
She lucks into the super babysitter of all time.
She does, but his humanity is never lost,
Yeah.
and him caring for that baby is so representative of how that part of him despite his circumstances, was not lost. And there are actually, we've been talking so much about the poverty and the
Yes.
situation he's in, but there are some genuinely humorous
Oh, there are,
moments.
yes.
When he meets a gentleman on the bus who's dressed as sort of Spider-Man,
Oh, I know. He's
but isn't
Ragman.
quite Spider-Man.
It's a great eccentric.
He's Cockroach Man. The wonder of him as a child
Yes.
comes through, and that still isn't lost.
Well, Mary, he spends his first night in an amusement park,
Yes.
which I think is a perfect metaphor for what he's going to go through. If our listeners are thinking about Slumdog Millionaire, I think that's appropriate, except that Slumdog Millionaire, I think, looks like The Sound of Music compared with this.
The fantasy of how the slumdog moves out of the slums and becomes a millionaire is
I know.
definitely more fantastical than this story. I'll grant you that. And the other thing I wanted to comment on is so often you don't appreciate the soundtrack of a film.
Yeah.
And this was composed by Khaled Muzanar. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was also a co-creator on the film with the director Nadine Labaki. And it is such a haunting, moving, adds to the emotion of the film score. It almost becomes a character in and of itself. And it is a film worth seeing from that craft perspective alone.
Oh, Mary and I so agree, because I'm tough on music. I often feel it's manipulative, and in this case it is not. It's a
not.
perfect companion. All right, Mary Yerina.
John DeSando.
Yes, this is Capernaum. What grade would you award it?
I am giving it a rarefied A for
I know,
me.
Mary. And a rarefied way, I'm going to agree with you. This is an A. We don't give anything higher than that. But
No.
this is a magnificent film.
It's a magnificent film, and it ends on such a hopeful note through this character, Zane. I would recommend go seeing it.
Yes.
And as a postscript, if I could
Yes.
add, Zane, who played Zane, he and his family were actually Syrian refugees. They
Right.
left war-torn Syria 7 years ago. And after this film was made, they finally were granted their papers and are being resettled in Norway
Oh.
with support of a nonprofit organization
Oh.
who assists
Fantastic.
immigrant families. So he himself, who did not get to go to school, is now going to get to go to school and is headed to Norway.
And characteristic of the actors in this, he was a delivery boy.
Yep, he was.